Happy New Year! Let's dive in. Podcast number 26, 5 steps to having a body breakthrough in 2024. If we've not met before, my name's Ryan. I'm the owner and one of the many awesome transformation coaches here with RN Body Transformations. I would be wearing the hat too, but I wore it a little too much and now it smells bad. So it is in the laundry. This is going to be a quick one today. I want to talk to you about the 5 steps to really having a body breakthrough in 2024. All of this that I'm going to go over is accessible to you. I'll put a link somewhere in our all new 12-week RN Body Breakthrough Blueprint. It's got all this and more, but it's not about the more, it's about the 5 steps. So if you want to be able to break through, I can just about guarantee you do these 5 steps and you will be further along than anyone else that essentially says, okay, I want to transform my body, where do I start? So these 5 steps, if you want to follow along and actually take the action as you listen, you will get so much more out of this. So as you listen, grab your notepad, grab a pencil and a paper, write down, pause the video if you're not watching on live, and you will get what I would say is a lot out of it. If you've done a one-on-one RN body transformation planning session with us, you know this is actually some of the stuff we do with you. If you guys are tuning in, hello. I can't see who you are, but you can comment and I'll say hi. Step number 1 is actually 2 parts. The first piece is we need to develop clarity. Now, this is pretty straightforward. Everyone already knows this. You got to know what you want. Think of the brain like a heat-seeking missile. Your brain will be pulled towards the actions that will get you towards a certain result. Now, it doesn't mean you'll like it, but when I say you'll be pulled towards it, I mean, if you know how to win a game, you generally take those steps. Now, that's oversimplifying. There might be pain there. We'll get over that in a second. First thing is you got to develop what you want, develop clarity, what you actually want. You must have a target. The clearer the target, the easier you'll be able to do number 2, which is develop certainty. But before that, we need to develop clarity on why you want it. So the more that you can clearly see it, the more emotion you will have readily available as fuel to achieve it. Emotion is the reason we do things as human beings. The more emotion that you have, the more you'll be pulled towards your goals. And the same is to be said about finding out why you must change. So think of your why like the emotional gas that's going to get you going, right? If you're familiar with this idea of decision, the Latin word for decision literally means to cut off from. So if you're going to make a decision and say, enough's enough, I'm putting the old life behind me. The life not necessarily of, we'll say, unhealthy habits, but the life of going all or nothing. The life of every time I start a journey like this, I go overboard, I cut out everything, and then I just relapse back to old habits. If you're ready to do something new, then it starts with essentially having the reasons for why you need to make this happen. That's going to be your fuel for making that decision. As human beings, we'll always work to move towards pleasure and to stay away from pain. And if you can create massive pleasure to achieve your goal and how it will transform your life, your relationships, and more, will also create a massive pain to stay where you are and how it will continue to destroy your life, relationships, and more, you will uncover a massive drive to achieving it in the immediate, which is what you need. There's 3 things that are going to allow you to be able to essentially get to your goal. It's story, strategy, and state. State is what we're talking about right now. You can have the best strategy in the world, right? That's the science of weight loss. The strategy. And the strategy, everyone pretty much knows how to lose weight, right? Eat in a caloric deficit, do resistance training for long-term results and to build muscle. Like, this is pretty straightforward. But the challenge that we run into is the story we tell ourselves and staying in an empowered state so that we can feel good enough to keep going when things get frustrating, when results are frustrating or they slow down or you're just not getting what you want. It's imperative. So when it comes to developing your why, or really uncovering it, you're not developing your why. When it comes to uncovering your why, it's essential that we connect massive pain to where you are. And you might say to yourself, why would I don't want to be in pain? Exactly. So if you can connect massive pain to where you are, you know, if you like, for example, let's just say you're looking to lose 50 pounds, this might seem insensitive or graphic, but it's like if you can take your hand and grab, a handful on whatever your love handles, your size, your stomach, whatever it is, your arms, whatever it is, doing that is a painful experience. Thinking about how when you try on clothes, how it makes you feel, how it makes us feel like, we don't even want to go out anymore. We don't want to be seen. Going through these uncomfortable feelings are actually a positive thing in the short term because it inspires us to take action and make a decision. So even though I don't want anyone to suffer and I don't want anyone to be in pain, short-term pain emotionally lead you to take action to actually get out of long-term suffering. And then, of course, connecting massive pleasure to achieving the goal, which it's very important that you don't just, or as individuals, we don't just logically think about what we want. You can write down everything that you want. It's another thing to sit there, visualize, and experience it. I'm not here to say manifest what you want, but what I'm here to say is if you can visually know with, I'll say, clarity, what you want to achieve and why it's going to benefit you, you can feel it, you will feel more pulled to achieving what you want to achieve. Number 2 is develop certainty. So once you got all that stuff out of the way, cool, now we're developing the certainty. You know exactly where you want to go. You know why you need to get there. It's been painful. Your habits have been painful, led you to a result that's painful in the past. It's painful now. It's going to be painful in the future if you don't change. And you have all this amazing things that will happen if and when you get to this goal. Fantastic. Well, now you need to develop certainty. And certainty is really the belief that whatever you're going to embark on is actually going to work. This is crucial. The challenge is many women and men equally have failed in the past over a dozen times. So what happens when you fail over a dozen times? The brain goes, well, why would this time be any different? You have to give it a reason for why it will be. Otherwise, we're no different than the elephant that when it's a baby at the circus, if you ever wonder how they train those elephants not to run away, when it's a baby, they'll take a rope, tie it around the ankle of the elephant, tie it to one of the pitches at the tent, right? One of the sticks. And when the elephant up to about 1 year old, it will try to pull away and pull and pull and pull and pull and pull. And as hard as it will pull, eventually, around 6 months to a year, it will stop pulling. But the elephant keeps growing. And even though the elephant at full adult age is completely capable of ripping the whole tent down and breaking free, it has all the power, it doesn't. Why? Because it decided, well, I've tried so many times to I've tried so many times to escape, but I can't. So it decided, it made up in its mind that it cannot do the thing, therefore I can't. How many people do you know? Maybe you've even been here. I know I've been here with clients, even with myself in different areas, right? How many times have you heard somebody that says, I can't lose weight because of my hormones? Right? Fair. And that very well may be a factor. However, is it the factor? Is it the defining factor? Is it the thing that essentially somebody is giving all their power to, and because of that, they do not take action? And if that's the case, that's a disempowering belief. I'm not here to say that those things aren't real, but what I'm here to say is we don't want to give things out of our control power, because when we do, we, therefore, because we're giving the power, are powerless. We want to maintain the power, and one of the best ways to maintain power is to be able to take full responsibility for where you are, regardless of all the things happening to you. The idea is extreme ownership. So we have to develop certainty. If you've failed 10 times in the past, you better believe your brain's going to go, why is this going to be any different, right? So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. It must be different than the other times. One focused on an infinite game instead of a finite one. If you're not familiar with that idea, the majority of people, when they approach weight loss, they focus on losing, 20 pounds in 4 weeks or 20 pounds in 6 weeks, and they focus on depriving. They focus on just going all in. And while that is awesome, and it might work for you, it might work for some people, odds are if you're listening to this now, it hasn't worked. And the challenge that we ultimately run into is life. We have traumas that aren't resolved. We have to cope with emotions. We have work that's really stressful, whatever it is. And because of that, emotional stress is high and makes it really hard to do hard things consistently. And that's okay. We just might need a different approach. But this is all about getting started. we haven't even talked about the actual actions yet. The first piece is before you do anything, you have to get the mind in the right place. Because I could stand here right now and give you the plan, but if you don't have the emotion, if you don't have the willingness to do it, it doesn't matter. So you got to get the mind right first, then you get the plan in place. So the difference between an infinite game and a finite one, really quick. An infinite game is a game that has no end state, meaning that you win by just never stopping, ever, again. And that idea might seem scary, but it probably seems scary because of things that maybe you tried in the past, and those things in the past aren't sustainable, which I can imagine. That would be really scary for me. But a finite game is a game that you play for a certain amount of time and then you stop. So that's like, all right, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in, by this time for a wedding, for this, for that. But there's an end state. The problem with end states means that, well, guess what? If you stop the actions, the results go away. So everything that we do has to be around this idea of an infinite game, starting and never stopping again. Number 3 is create your 12-week plan with measurable incremental steps, which I dive into below. And we can even dive into it a little bit together. Why not? We'll have some fun with it, as long as I'm not talking too much. So number 3 is create your 12-week plan with measurable incremental steps. For the interest of this document, I've given you an example of how you can approach your 12 weeks without a coach. Of course, we offer one-on-one coaching, right? But a lot of you, I'm going to be straight up, in this group will never take advantage of one-on-one coaching. And I'm cool with it. It is what it is. Still here to help. So if you don't know anything about the coaching that we do, we don't create all the plans for like 12 weeks, 24 weeks, 52 weeks on day one. It just doesn't make sense. We only create 7 days at a time. Depending on what happens during those 7 days with your results and sustainability will determine what we do the next 7. And this allows us to only give you the most optimal steps week by week while supporting you through it daily, the emotional ups and downs, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. As far as the actions, right? And yeah, let's talk about it now. Why not? So here's like a very general 12-week goal, right? So the example starting point is somebody that's sleeping 5 hours a night, exercise is non-existent, their water is only 0.25 times their body weight. Speaking of, I should probably take a sip so I don't get a sore throat later. That's nice. Their stress is an 8 out of 10. Their protein is only 0.25 times their body weight. So that's where they're starting. In 12 weeks, where we hope to get to, right? We want to get to about over 50 hours a week, which is a little over 7 hours a night, at like minimum. Exercise 3 times a week, resistance training, water, the goal weight in ounces, stress below a 5 out of 10, right? Actively managed. We never want stress to be 0 because then you'd be dead, right? Like life is stressful. It's part of life, but managed, right? Monitored. And then protein, we want that about 0.75 times your goal weight. And that's like a very solid goal for 12 weeks. And by doing, you'll notice that these goals aren't around weight. That's weird, right? They're around actions. Why are they around actions? Well, because if you do the actions, you're going to get the weight regardless, whether it takes you 12 weeks, 16 weeks, or 8 weeks. And if you're playing an infinite game, why does it matter? Right? Now, of course, if we were working one-on-one, we would have the goals, but I'm trying to give you something that is really cemented in this idea of the infinite game. So, of course, week 1, you might say, okay, look, a lot of people go all in and say, I'm going to do all these things. And that's okay. Maybe it works for you. But again, the goal is to start and never stop again. So I'm sure you would agree. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if it takes you a week to hit this, a month, 12 weeks, or even a year. What matters is that 10 years from now, you haven't stopped. That's what matters. So the approach that I would take in that philosophy is, well, we have to optimize for never stopping. Well, why do we stop? We stop because we're overwhelmed. We're not overwhelmed necessarily with this, but we're overwhelmed with life in addition to this. And that's where the pain comes in. So I recommend starting slow. For week 1, just get the sleep up. That's all. Get the sleep up, increase the water a little bit. You'll start feeling great. Week 2, sleep, water, stress. Now, of course, if you're working with a coach, this is more specific and maybe there's a little more things going on. But you can do this solo, right? Just identify what you're missing and then start to fill in the gaps. Week 3, you, what do we add here? You, just maintain it. And then I believe for week 4, there was something added, I think. No, it doesn't look like there's anything added. Week 3 and 4, essentially in this 12-week plan, they were missed. So you kept doing the same strategies because, I think that's actually good to note too. This idea of every week you don't have to be improving, right? Some weeks, like let's say week 1 and 2 you improve, week 3 you had a curveball. Well, you set the objectives you didn't reach, just set them again. It's okay. And then the next week you didn't hit them, set the objectives again with new strategies. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing expecting a different result. Of course, you're using a new strategy, but you just keep going until you hit the result. Then we increase protein. Cool. And then we increase protein again and increase water. And then maybe start exercising, doing some walks. Now, you don't have to wait until week 8 to start exercising or doing walks. Some people do that week 1. You also don't have to wait until week 10 or 9 to start doing resistance training. But these are just examples to start to give you some ideas on how to start. And you don't need to start crazy, right? And there's a lot of workouts and stuff in here for you guys as well. But let's go back to this really quick. So that's number 3, create your 12-week plan with measurable incremental steps. If you're taking a play out of my book, I do this with clients and I do this with myself. Any goal that you have, I highly recommend a daily check-in. Now, it might seem redundant. You might say, I don't understand why I'm doing this daily check-in. I already know my goal. And by measuring every day, not a lot changes, right? You're not doing it for the measurement or to see things change or go up and down. You're doing it so that you put focus towards it. Because think of your brain like a heat-seeking missile. How does your brain know what to do? How do you know what to do every day? Why do you take the actions you do? You do it because your brain, or you, whatever you want to consider it, I'll just say your brain because I don't believe I'm my brain per se, right? My brain has locked in things that are important. Making money is important. Spending time with my family is important. Working out is important. And the more times you essentially tell your brain this thing is important and you review something, you don't even have to tell it it's important. You just review it. Your brain starts to go, okay, this is important. And that's how you start locking it into the subconscious and start to be pulled towards these things. One of the ways. A lot of other ways too. But number 4 is maintain certainty and clarity. Now, you might say, wait a second. Step 1 and 2 is developing certainty and clarity. Now, a whole step is maintaining it? Yes. This is the reason people stop. 100%. And if you're trying to start and never stop again, if you ask yourself the question, if you maintained high certainty and high clarity during this time, would you ever stop? Nope. But the reason we stop is because we lose certainty. And we lose certainty generally because the actions we're taking are not working and we feel discouraged and we lose certainty that the process is working. Because of that, we quit. So how can you maintain certainty when things are uncertain? You gain new evidence, and you gain evidence that isn't necessarily your own, but from others. So for example, this is why having a coach can be really valuable. Because when you go to your coach and say, oh my God, I'm really discouraged, my weight hasn't gone down for the 3rd week in a row, and I'm doing everything I should be. And they point to not you or them, but they point to other clients that, yes, hey, you're not alone. Sharon was in the same spot. Here's her story. Here's what happened to her. She was gaining lean body mass, as she was losing fat mass, or she was at this point in her menstrual cycle, whatever it is, and this is why you're retaining more water, whatever it is. There's reasons. And because of that, you gain certainty. Oh yeah, okay. No, maybe I am on the right path. Right? And now you have certainty and you don't quit. Clarity is also equally important. It is, there's a funny story that goes along with clarity, which is kind of funny. It might be a little bit far-fetched, a little bit of a stretch, but I'm going to tell it anyway. There's a story about a family at Thanksgiving dinner, and it was like 3 generations there, 4 generations. And the little girl sees her mom putting in the oven roast ham into the oven. And she noticed that the ends were cut off, the ham. And she asked her mom, she says, "Hey, mom, why do you cut the ends off the ham?" And she goes, "Well, that's how my mom always did it." So they go over to the other room and they ask, say, "Hey, mom, what?" And it's her grandma. Why do you cut the ends off the ham? And she goes, "Well, that's how my mom always did it." And their mom wasn't with them. She was in another state due to health issues. She couldn't come, so they called her, right? The little girl's great grandma, and they said, "Hey, why do you cut the ends off the ham?" She said, "Oh yeah, well, when I was cooking Thanksgiving dinners and we made the ham, the stove was too small to fit the whole ham. So you had to cut the ends off to fit it." And everyone's like, "What?" And it's so funny how the point of that is it's easy to be doing things that we did yesterday or last week, last month, or last year out of habit, and we forget even why we're doing them. If you were to, and I do this often, there's been many times I've taken an audit on my life and I've looked at the actions that I'm taking and I've said, that doesn't make any sense that I'm doing this. This is an old pattern. This is an old habit. This does not serve me. So I stop. And I think it's important that we maintain this clarity through the many, many months, right? Because it's easy to let other things become more clear, like how comfy your couch is and not wanting to get off it. Let's see, should we mention anything from there? So yeah, it's pretty much everything I said, but maintain certainty and clarity, being honest. It's a hard thing to do solo. I already gave you examples why. We all start strong, but the initial hype reduces and we have one too many weeks of missing the mark. Pain sets in and we rationalize. I'm gonna start next week. I'm gonna start on first. I'm gonna start on Monday, whatever. And that's not a great time to be doing this. Really, it's our neocortex rationalizing the emotions of pain we feel. As humans, we make decisions for emotional reasons and back them up with logic. And that's something really interesting to think about. If you don't believe me, just think about how the brain is developed, right? You have these three layers. So you have the reptilian brain, which is like your brain stem, which is autonomic, involuntary. If I say to you, "Hey, don't flinch," and then I go like this, you're probably going to flinch, right, in real life. Why? Even though you knew it was coming, you cannot control your autonomic nervous system. And then you have your emotional brain, right? So even though rationally you say, "Okay, I'm not going to flinch," you still do. And then above that, you have your emotional brain, which is right, how you feel, your limbic system, right? We all know this. And then you have your rational brain. It's really hard to think yourself out of an emotion. Really hard. So we are kind of slaves to our emotional brain. And I believe the more we can acknowledge this, the more we can set ourselves up for success. Good times. And then step number 5 is win. Woo! You might say to yourself, that's an easy step. Winning is defined as starting and never stopping again, right? Sustainable weight loss is an infinite game that you can only win by continuing to play, right? That's what it is. And right, I already mentioned it. This isn't solely how we approach our 12-week breakthroughs with coaching, but it's super important to focus on an infinite game. It is the infinite game that allows you to get to your goal forever. And like, again, putting it in perspective, I've given this example multiple times in the past. You have these two people and one person loses 20 pounds in 6 weeks and she celebrates. The other person loses 4. And who's in the lead, right? The person that loses 20. 6 months from now, first person is down 30 pounds. Awesome. Starting to slow down though, and her motivation is taking a hit because she's not getting results as quick. She's like right on her wit's end of willpower. The other woman is down 12 pounds. A year from now, the first woman has stopped and gained 20 of the 30 pounds back, feeling defeated, feeling like garbage. And then the other woman just kept losing and is down 24 pounds. Now, you already know what's going to happen a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now. Person number 2 hits her final weight goal and sustains it with minimal pain. And person number 1 yo-yos. So if there's anything that I can leave you with, it is the idea that you can do this, and what it takes is a different view of fitness, a different view of dieting, right? It's not dieting, right? Very important. Anyway, hopefully this is beneficial. You can get this whole document for free. It's just a lot of you already got it, but if you are in this group for a while, I just updated the blueprint. So that's the new one you're looking at. If you want a copy, just let me know in the comments and I'll send it to you. That's it. See you guys later. Hopefully it helps. Make 2024 the best year ever.